Yeah, and you just hit on mindset, and I want to walk through, because you mentioned about being around a team and having a common, whether it's as simple as how you start your day, how you book your planner, having that sort of unity within a group. And then you kind of briefed over this run that you guys did. We're definitely going to pause and settle into that for a little bit. But when you mentioned mindset, I think about how, for me personally, how we started, this coronavirus thing. Initially, there's newness, right? It's like this rallying cry, and no one knows what it's going to be. This is so new. So I think for me, I didn't even know how serious it was from an economy standpoint, or how long it would last. So at first, everyone's kind of this excitement around, okay, we're going to get to work from home. And I think that's what you reference. And I think so that first week or two, I do think in an odd way, there was a lot of excitement around the contrast of just coming and continuing to show up and do your role as you've been doing it. And I don't know if you guys feel that way or not, but once you settle in, for me, after those 1-2 weeks, then the challenges started to show up for me. The challenges where I used to do my day this way, and now I don't have the day. Those were the conversations between, my wife and I about how do we do this? She's working, I'm working. We have a 10-month-old, and that's an easy situation compared to so many around even our organization in the country. So that's around the 2-week period. And then it was almost like a couple weeks of, for me, frustration of, God, it wasn't the way it was, and I'm still like wanting it to be that way. And then this switch flipped, and I think stretch call helped it, but it almost went back. Okay, now we're going to shift. This is the way it is. We're going to shift our mindset that we are going to be able to go back on offense, and it's going to be different. It's a different ball game. If you were able to work this many hours before, you're going to be working this many hours now. If you were able to work and get your whole day done before 5:30, 6 o'clock, it may not be that way, and you may work a little bit at night. You're forced as a professional, as an individual, as a dad, as a spouse, to now adapt to this new environment. That's what we're seeing with restaurants that didn't do carryout, and now all of a sudden they're doing takeout. Like, you're seeing all these businesses that are now forced to do things to be able to continue to be effective. So you guys personally set out to do something pretty awesome. I want you to tell this story, because a part of that, and when I talk about the offense, a part of that for me, man, like, and I know a lot of people can relate to this, hence your beverages back right, is once the pandemic came and we were home so much, like every single night it was a glass of wine. Every single night it was a couple glasses of whiskey, bourbon, right? And I'm not even one of those guys that really drinks during the week. I'm more of a social drinker. I'll get out and about, love to have fun and mix it up, but just very structured in how my week goes. But it'd be a Tuesday, it's 6:30, and you feel like you've had this long day. For us, the baby would go down, the wine would come out. Next thing you know, it's 1 bottle, it's 2 bottles. My sleep's affected. I wake up, it's Wednesday, and then you do it over and over again. It was like those first 2 weeks, I had to look in the mirror and be like I might be an alcoholic. and then that shift started to happen where now a month in, it was like, no, okay, got to take care of my body, got to get on a program, got to limit the booze, got to limit the snacks, because I've seen where that's drug me from a production or a feeling or anxiety standpoint, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that is totally the cycle too. I mean, I probably had, and of course this is on camera, so this is probably not the best time, but I mean, I'm sure a lot of people could relate. I probably had a drink for 3 weeks straight almost. Like it's just weird. Like I was down in St. James City, so I was down there with the family, and one of the cool benefits of this is, Carter doesn't have school, so we were able to go somewhere for, longer than a weekend, which is probably won't happen for a long time, but so it was awesome. But man, it just, all of a sudden you've been working all day, you want something to do, you want a change of scenery, right. you want some sort of like transition into this next phase or whatever, and I would have a glass of wine or go outside and do the sunset thing, and after a while you're like, dude, this is gonna work, man. Like this is we got to figure something else out.
Got to get some water in here.
It's almost like you want to change. You're like, okay, we're still in the same place. We're still at the house.
Yeah.
But we want something different. So pouring that drink
people couldn't find toilet paper, but they sure as hell found booze, man.
A lot of booze.
Yeah, but no, I agree with you, man. My mindset shifted. It shifted pretty quickly, but it went from, oh, this is a nice little break of pace, to, okay, now you got to settle back in and adapt to the situation, right? So, and man, it was like a battle, rally cry for this whole squad. And, I know the physical part of, part of our phase as a company, we decided to rally around the health train and kind of metaphorically put together, a battle plan against coronavirus, against COVID, and that starts with our own personal health. And what a great way to battle the threat of getting comfortable in your own home environment, which is probably more or less what was happening for me personally, and I know you guys would feel the same way, is get uncomfortable, go on the offense, get out of your own space, do things that make you feel as if you're not just relaxed, going through the motions. And I don't think there's a better way to do that than to stress yourself physically, and put yourself under stress and challenge yourself.
So you mentioned a couple of things. Brett put together a kind of a 3-phase declaration, if you will, to the entire organization among this unknown, this pandemic, COVID. And the first part of that was urgency, right? It was almost like this understanding of there's so much unknown. If you're a salesperson, what you have in your pipeline, have urgency on what you need to do right now over the next couple weeks, 30 days, while it's still normal to some extent, to be able to button up what you need to button up. But moving into that, phase 2 was all about health and fitness. And I love the way you put it, because you talk about there's so many uncontrollables in this situation, and I think that's breeding a lot of anxiety for everyone. But what can you control? And what a great health and fitness is so relevant right now with what's going on. And then I want you to talk about that now that, as a company, we're kind of coming into that health and fitness declaration phase. But you guys recently did something pretty special. And I know you shared on socials and for those that know you, obviously, but I wanted to allow you kind of to talk about where that came from, why you did that, and just about the experience in general, because I think you just mentioned about getting uncomfortable, and that's a huge part about mindset and what people are going through.
Yeah, I mean, I think our title for it is Back to the Basics, which, we can't trademark that. That's something we've talked to a lot of other people, and I know some other people are doing that too. But for us, it's back to the basics, and the basics for us is personal development. We made a decision early on that this was going to be a unique opportunity to go back to what we know. And when you're faced with a difficult situation in life, you got to go back to what you know. And that's the one thing all three of us line up in that we know well. That it's in that refuge we find the answers to whatever it is that we're looking for. And it's just always been that way for our career, whenever we've been faced with any type of challenge, and this will be no different. So in part of that is the physical aspect. There's a lot of other components that go to that development piece of what we're talking about, but one of those is the health and fitness. There's a lot that says, the mind takes care of the body, and I totally disagree with that. I think the body takes care of the mind. And creating a habit and creating momentum physically creates clarity mentally and creates sharpness on a mental level. So, and during these times, you want to be performing at your best, and there's no better way to jumpstart that than to, put your body under stress and put some challenge in your life. So it was a directive that all of us lined up on and we all agreed upon, and we're entering that phase now. But I know a lot of people haven't waited for that start line. I know we didn't wait for that start line. So I'm excited to know what the next 30 or 60 days is going to be. I don't think I'm going to be running 48 miles in 48 hours anytime soon, but maybe we'll do something else. So we did
so why 48?
Yeah.
Where the hell did that come from?
Well, it's a David Goggins challenge, which I didn't know it was until after the fact until we were about to run. But it is a David Goggins challenge, but we have a buddy who is in the industry, Randy Abrams, and he's always been a great advocate for great conversation and cohesion and just really cool collective accountability for progress. And he's on this health and fitness train too, and he's been doing some awesome stuff. Shout out to you, man. And we had a cool conversation about this. I don't know, it was maybe a month ago. It was during one of the podcasts we were chatting, and I think I mentioned it to you guys. And I was like, dude, this is ridiculous. Like, I can't believe he's like, yeah, every 4 hours you run 4 miles for 48 hours. So you run 48 miles. And I was blown away. I was like, well, how do you sleep? Do you sleep? He's like, well, yeah, that was a little tough. You don't get much sleep. I was just blown away. It just sounds dramatic, right? It is dramatic. And I was like, damn, man, all right. And you're going through the motions of anytime, if you're a competitor, you hear somebody do something, the immediately thing you ask yourself is, man, could I do that? That's whether you say it or not, you're immediately thinking to yourself, man, could I do that? And so it kind of went one ear out the other, and I was just impressed. And then we had conversations about it, and then we had a Zoom call, I think, with Randy just to catch up and have a happy hour.
Happy hour, yeah.
And we had a cocktail, and I think it came up again. And if anybody knows Rod, Rod has no shame in signing up for shit right away, like without talking. It's like, let's do it, man. And I'm just like, all right, let's do it. So we're on this Zoom call, and basically, without knowing it, we kind of commit to doing this, right?
And then you put it up on social media, and I'm like, okay, now you're really committed.
Absolutely, that was intentional.
Maybe that's why you did that.
Absolutely, that was intentional.
I didn't sleep well from that night. I'm like, wow, we really,
this escalated.
You really think?
You really think?
This really escalated. I thought they were joking.
So literally, we set a date, and then I don't think we really have a conversation about it. We were super busy. Both of us were
super busy. We did have a call about it. I sent you, trying to be funny, I sent you a text 3 hours. Well, I'll give you an idea. It is, as we sit here, it is 4:10. We ran a week ago today at 8 p.m. So I text Brett about right now, a week ago to the day. What do you think, you guys? What do you got going on? You want to go for a little run?
This was 3 hours before we started.
3 hours before the run. We hadn't. Susan was like, have you researched what to eat?
Yeah.
Have you stretched?
Oh, so you didn't know you were going to do it until the day
no,
of?
we did. We knew, but like Brett just said, we were busy. We were hammering. We were doing our thing, and we got to run. We're ticking down.
It came fast.
We're ticking down on a run. Like Monday came and went, and Tuesday I'm like, oh, we're running tonight, and before I know it, it's 8 o'clock and we're here.
Yeah. So you run, and it takes you what? About an hour and change to do every leg at the slowest. So maybe you made up some time where it's 45 minutes, but then it starts to. So then you have 2.5, 3 hours to rest.
We started off fast. So we were like, oh, we'll do 10-minute miles, because you go out and you run 3 miles. You're like, oh, I can do a 10-minute mile. And I think Brett Eddy was which is his personal coach. He's been on the podcast. He's like, whoa, hold on, 10-minute miles. That is aggressive.
That's aggressive.
Yeah, no, you don't want to do that. Don't start out like that. So, we had a good, so he gets over here. So we planned on, we'll do half, which this is half of it in my neighborhood, and then the other half, the second leg in Rod's neighborhood. And so he gets here, and it was just like, I think we were busy up until like 15 minutes before we were about to run. Like it was just eerie. And then it was like, oh, okay, yeah, we're about to run 48 miles. Okay, hey, nice to see you. Let's go. So we start out, I think we did like 48 minutes, 47 minutes?
We did 47 minutes our first 4 miles. So call it 12-minute pace, which according to Brett Eddy, he said 12 to 15 is probably pretty good. But if you're talking in runner circles and you talk to somebody, say you're running a 12-minute mile, they're looking at you going,
what are you doing?
What?
Yeah.
So
well, again, that's in runner circles. Like, I don't know if you guys have ran over 4 miles like in your life.
No.
What's the most you've ever ran?
11 miles was the farthest I've ever gone in one time.
And when was that?
I did a Savage race or whatever those things are. It was 11 miles 3 years ago.
That's amazing.
4 years ago.
I think I did a marathon. Didn't we do a half marathon or a marathon in Lexington? Remember?
No, that was
Kentucky?
a 10K.
That was a 10K.
Yeah, I mean
that's
So
the
that's
most
six-
I've ever
that's
done. I
6.2
barely
miles.
could do that.
Or 6.4 miles. No,
Yeah.
3.2, 6.2. That's 6.4.
Yeah, I was dying. This was like what 15.
No, that's why I think it's funny because in runner circles, that's why when I found out you guys were doing it, I was like, whoa, because I had run a half marathon this year, and I knew for me how challenging that was because I don't enjoy running either, and I knew how much training I put in to do that, and I'm thinking to myself, these guys don't know what it feels like when you get.
No.
And by the way, if you're watching this and you think like, that doesn't sound bad, 4 miles every 4 hours, go run a mile or go walk 3 miles, and then you'll realize really quick that starts to be a thing, and that's.
I remember
anyway.
the first time we ran. I remember the first session we ran 4 miles, right? And we get back and we're winded. It's 4 miles, man. Like I can't remember the last time I went out and just ran 4 miles. I was running before this for a couple weeks just because I wanted to be uncomfortable. Not because I didn't. This was all
This
random.
wasn't planned, yeah.
I just decided I hate running. It's the worst thing I want to do. So I'm going to do that. That sounds good because it comes back to that mindset conversation we were having. I wanted to get uncomfortable because I felt like I was way too comfortable in our own environment with the wine and with the family and just it felt too comfortable. So, but I would run 3 miles and think that I did a good job. So on this first leg, we ran 4 miles, and we get back and I'm winded and I'm like, and we kind of looked at each other and we're like, yes, and I'm doing social media and I'm journaling, and I think as soon as I did like the first story, I think Rod looked at me and said, that's one. We have 11 more. I'm like,
I was referring to them as trips. We have 11 more trips.
I was like, wow. And he's like, I think I'm gonna go to sleep because we have to get up in like 3 hours.
Well, and the thing that was interesting was you referenced that whether it was 48 minute, whether you held a 48-minute pace the whole time, or by the end we were walking and we were pretty banged up. I'll call it an hour and 10 minutes. Call it 70 minutes. I don't feel like the actual work was hard.
The walk.
It was
run, jog.
painful. There were some trips were better than others. The part that messed with me was when you get back, you have to ice,
Yep.
you have to eat, you have to hydrate,
You gotta stretch.
and you have to stretch. Well, you've only got, let's say you average an hour. That leaves 3 hours when you get back.
Mm-hmm.
Take away 45 minutes of that for those things if you fast track them.
Yep.
Now you've got 2 hours and 15 minutes before you got to work again. Call it 15 minutes to get ready and stretch on the other side. That's 2 hours. So if you are going to lay down and try to rest, your mind's going. You're not going to get good rest.
Yeah, you can't go. I couldn't fall asleep.
You can't. We couldn't
You're
fall
thinking
asleep.
about the next run.
I could, probably 1-2 times he fell asleep, once at my house hard and once here that I remember, and I probably fell asleep maybe one more time hard. So call it 3 times out of 11 sleeps. Right, 11 times to shut her down. That part worked on me way more than did the actual run, because one thing I really found comforting was the track we set in here. I'd go do it right now. I'd go run it right now. It was that good of a track, right? It was just, I know it. I know exactly how, and it doesn't seem like it's that far, just
Yeah,
because
'cause
I've
you're
driven
weaving,
there, right?
you're-
You're in the same neighborhood. Claremont, on the other hand, to all you watching, hopefully there's no Olympic athletes that come to Claremont to run and ride hills. I mean, you guys are nuts. I won't ever run at my house again.
It was brutal.
We went to my house for run 5 and 6, and I was having some right conversations with myself on that 5th one. Like,
What was the darkest moment of the whole trip? Was it in Claremont? And if so, what was it that kept you going? Did you think about tapping and quitting? Did you?
That's interesting you say that. So Brett and I go 8 p.m., midnight, 4 a.m., 8 a.m. here in Windermere. And we had pretty good runs. We had pretty good work, pretty good trips, right? We had podcasts going. We were listening to the same podcasts, and we were kind of, we'd take a pause, we'd talk about a point or whatever. Oh, did you hear that? That's cool, you know.
It was great.
So it was we were working to try to get more out of the run than just
Right.
the mindset. We were actually putting in some good time on content, you know, just rich content. We decided to go from here to my house for number 5. So 8 a.m. we finished here. We go to my house. We stop at McDonald's because we're both absolutely famished.
Starving.
And we're thinking, well, it's carbs, right? It's got to be decent. That I can't tell you what that did to me.
What'd you get?
I got a couple of those McGriddles, man.
We waited. They weren't ready.
Yeah,
They're like, we can get you something else. Rod and I look at each other. We're like, and Rod's like, absolutely not. We will pull into that space. Keep in mind that like time is like the
Time's
most
ticking.
precious
Yeah.
asset. And this dude, we're so famished, and we have got our mindset stuck on having.
We've been talking about it for 2 runs. We're going to McDonald's. We're going to get McGriddles. Oh yeah. Well, that showed itself to me during the 5th trip at my house. So we leave my house, and I felt like we ran 8 miles uphill to get to the first mile marker, and I ran that. So we get a visit from Brett Eddy.
There's no
out of
sidewalk.
nowhere, Brett Eddy shows up. He's going to run with us. So how great is that, right? You got somebody coming out to support you, actually going to put 4 miles in with you, and I'm failing.
Right.
I'm not going to tell you that I didn't have some conversations with myself that I'd be embarrassed about now that we've completed it. But for a minute there, around 2-3 mile mark, I was just like, I was mad. I didn't say a word. He and Brett are just like, you know, you're all right, man. Just you have your conversation with yourself, because you know I wasn't talking.
Well, there at some point you were like, guys, I'm sorry, and I looked at you and I said, dude, we could walk this whole thing. It doesn't matter. It's all good. But it looked like you were like, hey guys, leave me here, go get the car, come back and pick me up. That was definitely off. But you rallied, man.
And bring a bat.
You totally rallied. The next couple runs was completely different than that. I mean, that was definitely they call it hitting the wall. I feel like that was your wall.
It was definitely my wall. Was the 5th trip. The 6th trip, Susan joined us.
Mm-hmm.
We ran around my neighborhood. We looked at each other after the 6th trip and said, we are getting out of Claremont.
Going to the flat ground.
We're going back to
right
the flat.
back here.
We came back here, and so this is pretty fun to talk about, because when you start talking about mindset, and we were there to support one another through, like if I had to crawl, Brett would have crawled right with me, and vice versa. So we weren't quitting. We didn't care how tough it was going to be. So the mindset was, we're finishing this. But I tell you something that happened. So Brett Eddy comes, goes around with us for number 5. My wife Susan, we're at my house. She says, well, I'll run with you. She runs with us for 6. Well, we didn't really understand what was happening at that point. I don't think Brett or Susan did at that point either. But for run 7, we come back to Brett's house. Taylor's here, suited up to run, which is great. You know, we got our partner, you know, our third leg of our, you know, stool here. He's going to run with us. And all of a sudden there's a knock on Brett's front door. And Chris had come over from Melbourne. So he had driven an hour.
Yeah, hour 15, something like that.
Hour and 15 minutes. Showed up just to run that 4 miler with us at 8 p.m.
Unbelievable.
So here, Brett and I were round 5 and 6 in Claremont were okay, but they weren't great.
They were rough.
They were bad for me. They weren't as bad for you. That was definitely my wall. But we took off here on run 7 with 2 teammates, Brett and I, and I call 7 my best run.
Yeah.
I for some reason the pain went away. It was the excitement of having the team here, or you know, two important people here, you know, just to show support. So the mindset, I mean, talk about enhanced, you know, being enhanced in an enhanced state, man, there's no question. I know we talked about that.
Well, it's a perfect example. This is why you do these runs. You say, well, why you do these? I mean, this is, you know, I've always shied away from this stuff because I'm not the best athlete. Like it's not my comfortable space. And you may or may not agree with that or not. I don't know. But for me, I've learned more about myself in these situations than anywhere else, because you get to really have those aha moments. An aha moment, for example, is during run 7, your body's more banged up than 5 and 6. but yet you're running, but yet you feel okay, but yet you're invigorated. Why? Then you start asking these questions like, well, why is that? Well, you just had support. You've got people showing up. It's only 4 miles for them. It's their first run. So, you kind of feel like it's your first run.
Right.
You feel this camaraderie, this energy with the people that are there. You feel like, man, people are counting on me. People are supporting me. Also, I got 5 and 6 done, and it was awful. How much worse can this one be? We were in Claremont, it's all the hills. Now we're here and it's flatter, right? Thank goodness, right? So when it was here and it was flat before, you didn't say, wow, thank goodness this is flat. This is a cakewalk. But you went to an extreme where it was really tough, and then you come back and you have a different perspective, right? All of these lessons that somebody can articulate them and tell you, but when you live them,
Very true.
you have a different experience, and you can't live those experiences unless you put yourself under a stressful situation. Whether that's business, life, anything, you learn more by hearing from somebody who's done it than you do from somebody who listened to it on a podcast, right?
That's right.
So,
which is worth sharing that, because again, I go back to that, like, you may know that intellectually that you value somebody showing up and running with you, but that feeling of actually being in it and being at that wall and doing something challenging, and then you mentioned perspective. I mean, I think that's huge when you talk about why do that stuff, why push yourself, is there's a difference between knowing and feeling. There's a difference between knowing intellectually and having it in your gut, right? And to me, that's what you guys just hit on.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what
It's
you
crazy
hit
to
on.
me too, the saying, your mind will quit long before your body will, is so true. It's so true. I mean, that fifth trip was dark, but my legs kept moving. I mean, I wasn't, everything kept moving, everything kept working. And
You were talking to me earlier about, I said, man, how are you feeling? And you said, share about how you went from the last couple runs to the minute it was done.
well, if I may,
Yeah.
before that, so we run, it's important, I think it's important because, we put a lot of emphasis on team and support and cohesion and the things we do to build culture, and the investment we make to build culture and the investments that we make in personal development. I think it's important to talk about, in an answer to that question, just who we're talking about here at Urban Young. So we run our 7th run. We got Chris and Taylor.
We're so grateful.
We're extremely grateful, which is exactly what I was just going to say. We walk in here, we're hugging, we're high-five. We weren't hugging, we were bumping, sorry. Social distancing. We ran 6 feet apart.
Hey, I'm gonna just straight up, some people were hugging, and it made me very uncomfortable.
I'm a hugger, man. This has been a tough 6 weeks for me.
I was like, yeah, I know you guys are tired, but like, we're here already? I mean, like.
Well, so we get done. Taylor leaves, Chris leaves. Literally had just come here to just support. Brett and I go in, we grab some food, we rest, we stretch, we ice. We might have even jumped in the pool, and which having your pool here was great, to be able to kind of cool down in there. We go to bed. We both fall asleep hard.
Yeah.
Hard. That was one of the times we fell asleep hard.
Yep.
We had been setting alarms 15 minutes before the top of the run, before the run was supposed to start. So both of us, I don't even remember hitting snooze. Both of us apparently.
do.
Both of us apparently. He said he hit snooze a couple times. Well, I wake up and it's like 11:59. I'm like, holy shit, we gotta go. So I'm rushing around, getting dressed. I'm like yelling at Brett. We walk outside. We walk outside at 12:10. Of course, it's midnight, and I hear, "Morning, boy." And your first reaction is, who's here? I'm gonna do something I shouldn't do. Like, I don't know what I can say, what I can't say, but my first reaction wasn't like, oh, that's. I'm like, who the hell is that? Sitting on the back of my truck is Eric Atzma, another team member, comes over to run with us.
It's amazing.
And it's midnight.
It's midnight.
Freaked us out.
Freaked us out,
This is
but
what, was it a Wednesday?
we're
Tuesday
now
night?
into
Wednesday.
Wednesday. So, no,
Yeah, Wednesday night.
yeah, this is Wednesday night. You're right. This is actually Thursday morning now.
Yeah.
So Eric runs at midnight with us, sneaks in. He's got muscle car, sneaks in the driveway, walks down the driveway because he knows we'll hear him. So he tiptoes in and he's waiting on us.
Closest to a home invasion I've ever had.
Exactly, right? Exactly. In some circles, I mean, he would have been fair game.
It would have been a trouble. Yeah.
So then we come back. We don't fall asleep real well, but we've got the 4 a.m. 4 a.m. comes, and about 3:50, I sit up and I see a car coming down the driveway. I'm like, Brett, you're not going to believe this. So walk out. We're getting our shoes on, knock on the door. Matt Eckberg, another ENYT member, right? He's here to run the 4 a.m. with us. 4 a.m., right? 4 a.m. Had to set an alarm for 2:30 to make it here on time. Go ahead.
What's so amazing about the story about the 4 a.m. is literally I set my alarm 30 minutes before because my feet were starting to bleed.
Yep.
Right. So I'm like, I want the sleep, but I can't do it. Like I've got to wake up early and tape off and like keep my feet from like going bad. You say the sleep was the hardest part. For me, it got ugly there at the end. Like my poor feet, man, were starting to really be pissed off that we were still running this.
Yes.
So for me, it was the pain. But, so here I am 30 minutes before making this sacrifice to go, I don't even care about the sleep. My feet hurt so bad. Let me try to mitigate this situation. So my mental state is not primed for, we're coming off this high with two team members showing up at 8. Eric's showing up at midnight. And obviously, we didn't get the pattern yet, but now it's 3:30. You're in the middle of the dead night. Your body hurts. You didn't get any sleep. I mean, my mental state was not in a good place. My mental state was like, man, please let's get this one over with so I can at least try to go back to bed. And then he comes in. And I think I literally there was probably another hug. There was definitely another hug.
Definitely a hug.
And it was all of a sudden, instantaneously, you got juice again.
Yep.
It's just wild.
Well, and then your mindset immediately shifts from the pain you're in and from the uncomfort we're in. We're like, there's another person here to support us. Let's go.
Absolutely.
And we got down, we got after it. We're both hurting, right? But it's like,
it wasn't about you anymore.
No, it wasn't about you. Yeah.
It was like, poor pitiful me.
Yep.
Look at me. I'm in pain, all this stuff. I have to wear this run. We have to do this, and then somebody shows up to support you, takes the time out of there, comes in the middle of the night to support you. It's like, it's not about any of your situation anymore. You want to honor the person that was there to support you. You know what I mean? So, and instantaneously that shift just gives you a completely different, not even perspective, but just a different feeling. It's like
it's like a fresh sheet of paper.
Yeah, he's running with us or walking with us, and you want to have conversations about him. You want to tell him how much you're so grateful, and you want it to be fun for him, because he took time out of his middle of his night to come here. So it's like now your focus just shifts, and it's fascinating to see what happens immediately when you change your state.
Well, plus what you just said there reminds me of another thought. It's like, what you give energy to is what's going to perpetuate, right? I mean, we're sitting here getting taped up and stretched out, and my Achilles had started bugging me, and we're just like, we're giving that energy, right? And I'm not saying it's not real, but the second we didn't give it energy, we got started, and the second we had gotten started, it was like, okay, well, we're going now. Mm-hmm. So it just funny how those things just melt together.
And that doesn't mean that the pain wasn't there,
right?
It's still there. It's not like all of a sudden, if you don't give it attention, well, then it doesn't exist.
Right.
Well, it absolutely existed, and it hurt like a son of a bitch. But it's just, you didn't verbalize it. You didn't have to sit there and harp on it. You didn't have to sit there and talk about it. And I know some of those runs we would complain for the first 100 steps. Oh, my sore. This is sore. Oh, this hurts.
And Tay asked about the end, and we made the last trip by ourselves. We'll get to that one, but. I'm glad nobody could hear us on that last one, but no. So we go around that 4 a.m.er with Matt. He immediately leaves, and it's like everybody knew that the minute this is over, they're out because they got to go and we got to get rest and do our thing. Nobody, wanted to kind of hang out and do anything. So we come back in, same story: stretch, ice, a little bit of food, try to get some sleep. We wake up, actually. So call it 7:45. 7:30, I get a tap on my toe. Tori is here. He's like, I'll be here when you're ready. He's here to run the 7:30, the 8 o'clock with us. So he goes around the 8 o'clock with us. Again, same feelings again. We finished that run, and basically what had happened was all of the department heads for Urban Young had come over. And we shut down that 8 a.m. run, knowing we had 2 more to go. And we said, man, how fun would it be if Amanda showed up?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, wouldn't that be neat? Wouldn't that be special if Amanda showed up? So we go in, we literally lay down, getting rest. We're getting dressed. TC's here, Brett's wife, TC's here. She's decides she's gonna come, because we're walking by now, gang. We're in the 70-minute range.
Completion mode.
We're in, like, if it's gonna take us 4 hours to walk 4 miles, we're in that mode.
Yeah.
So we've got TC and the kids joining us. We walk outside, and who's standing there? Amanda, her husband Mark, and the baby.
It's unbelievable.
And, you know, so we make
Travel from Melbourne.
traveled
over.
from Melbourne again to join us and do the same thing. So we had been visited by every single department head we have. We had received text messages from the team, other team members checking in, and whether it was before, during, or after. I mean, you just can't.
Yeah.
Support is just insane. It's just insane for that whole deal. And then ultimately, Taylor, to your ultimate question, this has been a long-winded approach to answering it, but I just want to let everybody know just what we received by doing this. We made that last trip. We got done, and we were both coming down. We got to about, well, we crossed 48 miles, about 0.3 of a mile from the house. So of course we're hugging, and we're just like, we did it. It was a cool feeling. The second we got done, we came back, we jumped in the pool. The second I got out of the pool, everything stopped hurting for me. Everything stopped hurting. I don't know why. Well, the Coors Light helped. We had a couple Coors Lights, and those went down really nice. It was nice to drink something that wasn't clear.
We were talking about it a little bit off camera, and it was almost like your mind, when you see something that big, is focusing on that. But the minute it's over and you know you don't have to go back, your energy releases from focusing on that, whether it be your Achilles or your blisters or whatever it may be. I find that fascinating, because I've had that experience, and you're almost like, wow, I had more in the tank.
Absolutely.
And at the time you would have said, no, I don't have more in the tank, which is really
So
interesting.
true.
Of, again, why you actually do it, rather
Right.
than somebody telling you that it's good to do hard things.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
like that's what I find interesting. So,
Well,
remember-
I think what's cool, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
I think what's really neat is you reference out of the top here, Brett, that it's a Goggins thing. And for those of you that have read his book, Can't Hurt Me, and you've listened to his podcasts and you know all the extreme things that he does, if you follow him on Instagram or whatever, there's a lot of references there. But one thing he talks about is the cookie jar. And I watched a clip on the 48-48 beforehand, and he just talks about it being another, because when he put this out, he didn't care if you ran it, walked it, biked it,
Yeah.
whatever. His point was, every 4 hours, you're going 4 miles, under whatever means necessary. And his point was, when you get done with that, when you get done with something hard, something difficult, something tough, something mentally draining, something painful, whatever, or you're about to face something, your reference to pain is different. Your reference to what is hard is different. And he calls it, you put that accomplishment or that feat in the cookie jar, and then you know when you can draw from it, when you need it, when something else seems to be, in front of you that's tough. So I think that for me was one of the neatest things about why'd we do it, just to know that we could.
It makes you more bulletproof than you were before you did it. It's a reminder and a realization that you could be as bad of a dude or as bad of a woman as you want to be. It's just you have to do the work. You have to cross that threshold. So I totally agree with that. There was a moment, I don't know which run it was, but there's a lot of pain. I don't know, this leg is still all bruised up and stuff, and it was very painful. But it was like, there's no broken bones. I didn't pull anything. I haven't cramped. Like, it's just pain. And it's funny because like my son told me that. He goes, "Dad, it's just pain." Because we have a saying in my house: if he gets hurt, I go, "Well, it's just pain." You know, it's funny how when it's reversed.
Yes.
And dad's
true?
complaining, but it was true. It was almost it was like kind of a conversation with yourself. He's like, "There's nothing wrong. It's just discomfort, right?" So now you have a different reference point of what you can do. And my reference point was when we biked to Melbourne. That at that point was the hardest thing I had ever done. And we were having that conversation on the walks and the runs was like, what's harder, this or that? But we wouldn't have been able to have this conversation if we wouldn't have done that before, right? So your frame of reference as you push the threshold creates, more capacity for you to be able to handle whatever stress comes your way, whatever challenge comes your way. So yeah, I think putting those cookies in the cookie jar just makes you more bulletproof.
Yeah, and you'd referenced the ride to Melbourne, and so what we did a year ago today, which is funny.
So
Crazy.
ironic that
I know.
you said that. You sent that text earlier. I could not believe.
Yeah, we were going to sit down. I got the Facebook memory, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's been a year. And so what we did is,
wild.
Just quick story, we acquired an agency of business in Melbourne, and we were set here located in Orlando. And it's about a drive, about an hour and 15, depending on traffic, but most of it's interstate. Which cannot be ridden by bicycle. I guess that's the law.
So we thought.
Yeah, so we thought, right? So
Or so one would think.
In the middle of the night.
So anyway, it's 70 plus miles to destination to arrive, or to start point to arrival, and the reason behind that, real quick, was just we called it the Ride for Culture, and we had acquired this business that was very different than we were. It's different people, it was a different style, it was different systems, processes. We felt like we were new school, they were old school. There was just so much, and it was an investment and a commitment by the three of us to say, you know what, we're gonna ride for culture. We're gonna do something that's hard to, it doesn't even really make logical sense. It's not like it's not like you put it on a whiteboard and go, oh yeah, that makes sense. It was just like you're going to put your guts out there and say
Yes.
that this is important to us.
Yeah.
Culture is important to this. Transforming this culture and the people that are going through adversity and the people that are putting up for this company and this culture, that we're going to do something tough to signify that we care and it matters and it's not going to be easy. So whatever that means to whatever, it meant something to us. And so anyway, that ride ended up being a little bit over 70 miles. Again, it's not about
74 miles.
But we weren't bikers, right? We didn't train for it. We had freaking mountain
was
bikes.
tough.
I mean, we had mountain bikes. I mean, Rod wasn't going to wear a helmet. Rod shows up to my house in the morning at whatever, 4 a.m., 5 a.m., and he's like, no, I'm good. We don't need a helmet. I'm like, bro,
We're gonna be on 520,
We're going to be on
bro.
520. We're going to have semi-trucks coming past us at 70 miles per hour.
You're wearing
like
a helmet.
you're wearing a helmet. And
I wore the helmet.
So he wore a helmet, and it took us 9 hours total to go 70 miles. Orlando, there's no really clear bike path. And
Flat tire along the way.
yeah, it was hot as hell. We had some adversity. But again, was one of those life experiences that when it showed up on my Facebook memories this morning, I was so proud. And I was reminded that, man, you really can do something. You can do, and it's like, what inspires us? We were talking about this a little bit off camera. What inspires us is ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And that's what Be Extraordinary means to me. And your 48 and 48 or our bike ride to Melbourne are just these very small mini examples of that. I mean, there's stuff that happens every single day with people that do these extraordinary things. And it's just fun to hear you guys talk about the cookie jar and to think about, because what are we all looking for? We're all looking to feel pride. We're looking to feel like we matter. And that's the battle internally in the conversations I think a lot of people are having, during this pandemic and this coronavirus and this lockdown, is you're having to really look at yourself in the mirror, and there's no more distractions. Like, your distractions are so limited. Like, you can't go distract yourself with this. No, you have to settle into yourself. You have to settle into what you're doing for a living, what your relationship is like within your own house, what your friendships are like, and really take inventory of what you think about the guy or gal in the mirror. And I think the most beautiful thing about doing something hard is that you respect that person a little bit more. And when I say respect that person, I mean yourself. And then another note that I want to talk about is that, you mentioned this on the run. I don't even know if you realize it, but I think you said something like inspiration burns outwardly. And
That's right.
what I borrow from that, and you go back to where you heard about the 48 and 48, and you mentioned Randy Abrams, this great dude, but without being in proximity to somebody who was willing to do something extraordinary, you would not have taken on that challenge.
Absolutely.
Right? And what's so funny about you guys doing that, within our walls, you had created people to drive an hour and 15 minutes where it made no logical sense to come run with you, to wake up in the middle of the night, to be here early in the morning, to bring their entire family in the middle of a work day and find coverage among the team to make it happen. And then throughout that, I know with me, I'm on my own mission with this new 75 hard deal.
Yeah, we're
9 days
gonna
in.
we're gonna get into that. You're not just gonna narrate here, buddy.
But the whole point is like, there's this trickle effect that we all are inspired in different ways, whether it's locally or from afar.
Well,
And-
let's get into that, because I mean, people are gonna probably be wondering why didn't you make the run with us? So why don't you share that?
I have no legitimate excuse. I mean, I was coming off of a sore foot, which sounds ridiculous.
That doesn't sound ridiculous.
I did not join really for no reason other than I had a sore foot. Could I have done it? Absolutely. I would hope, but I think the point is at that time it didn't move me enough to say yes for some reason. I don't know why, right? I looked at what you guys did, and I remember Randy sharing that and you guys being like, I'm all in. And at that point, I just wasn't all in. And I was just like, you know what, that's awesome they're doing that. And then in the middle of that run, I started to imagine myself how you guys were feeling out here. Because I kept thinking to myself, okay, at first it'll be fun. And then that midnight and 4 a.m. run when no one else is around, you have blisters to start to develop, that'll be at the point where you're gonna be in a dark place. And I started to think about myself, and then I started to almost feel bad that I wasn't experiencing it.
Interesting.
And then I was inspired to say, okay, the next time something came my way, that's just so how it happened. I said, yes, I'm in. Because of that. And that was the trickle effect of inspiration. If that makes any sense. I just wasn't there yet.
Yeah.
But then by your example, the next time there was some sort of ask or inspiration, boom, I'm in.
It's interesting to me what you did choose to get into. I think it's way harder what you got going on than what we did with 75.
At least ours is over
with 45, 48, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
Or
so Tate's doing
48.
75 hard, which for those that don't know what that is, it's 75 days of 2 workouts a day. One of them has to be outside. A specific strict diet that you choose of your choosing. No cheating at all, ever. A gallon of water per day, every day, and 10 pages of a good book.
Yes, a development book or a business book.
Of a business book.
Not fiction. Something you're learning.
And there's not like, oh, this is the program. No, if you cheat one time, you have to start over.
If you miss any of those components
One time.
on a day.
Right, one
Yeah,
time.
and I think one of the interesting parts about it, the workouts can't be consecutive. So it's kind of meant to be inconvenient.
Right.
In a life where you feel like you're scrambling for time.
So it can't be 2 straight hours.
Right. If you do
I
an
didn't know that.
outside morning walk, right?
you do like a push-up workout.
You wouldn't want to go right into your
Second
indoor
one.
second workout.
Oh,
You
wow.
would want to have some sort of break to where you're going back. And then the other part, and you're taking a progress picture each day. Which is kind of interesting. So,
Which is back to the same point. It's the same thing, right? It's uncomfortable. It's inconvenient. It's difficult, right? And so someone might say, yeah, that's not for me because it's not convenient. I can't really work it into my life.
I don't have the time.
What we're talking about is we want
right.
to do something that's completely does the opposite. Not because we want it to be convenient so we can have a sustainable outcome, but for the sole purpose of putting a massive wall in your way and seeing if you can climb over it.
That's
right?
it. That is literally
That's a great
the
depiction.
best description
Yeah.
of why I would say yes to something like this. It's not that I want to lose 10 pounds.
You want to see what you're made of.
I want to literally be able to say, check, I did that, and I'm closer to that type of person than I was before I did the challenge.
Think
And
what's
that's like it comes back to that mindset, right? That's a different mind. Someone might say, well, I don't want to do that because of that. A different mindset that says, I want to do that because of that. And if
Right.
you would have asked me 10 years ago, it wouldn't have made any sense to me.
Stupid.
I would have thought to myself, why would I do that? That doesn't make any sense. And now, just from being in good proximity like you guys and other good people that have been incredible mentors, now I'm hungry and searching for that.
Sure.
I'm no better physically than I was 10 years ago. Probably not. I'm just, hopefully through these cookie jar experiences of gaining cookies, you have a greater tolerance for being able to move the needle.
Yeah, and I would argue that mentally you're way better
Absolutely.
than you were 10 years ago. Yeah. All of us are. I mean, we're mentally we're stronger than we were a week ago right now today.
Amen.
So here's what's cool too, and to get to that point. So I said, okay, I'm doing this. My wife and I are doing it, which is really cool. And then I text, what you talked about, our department heads, kind of our core team, if you will, of leadership positions within E&Y. And I said, hey, I'm letting you guys know that I'm doing this, because if I don't let you know, I will mentally probably back out before the end of the day.
That's right.
So
Wow.
in my accountability group, or my inspiration group, whatever you want to call it, my mastermind group, I said, I'm doing it because the decision's done and I don't want to back out. And I also text another buddy of mine, Tim Barfried, that's on his 70th day, that I text him the same thing. I said, hey,
He's on
just
his
want to let you
70th
know.
day?
Yeah, I just want to
Shout
let
out
you
to
know.
you, man.
Yeah,
I
man.
just want to let you know that you're part of my inspiration. I'm going to let you know this so I can't go back on my word, right? So it was 3 different texts I
That's great.
sent out to get leverage on myself to not get in my head and not do it.
So good.
But then, no surprise, Chris and Eric on our team immediately go, I'm in. And then I had another buddy, AJ Tyler, guy I went to school with and played ball with. I'm in.
Is he doing it?
He and his brother are doing it, right? They're on day 8, I'm on day 9. So the whole point is, right, the inspiration burns from outside, right? By you doing that, you're not doing it because of that. But what a cool secondary
What a neat byproduct.
So let me give you kind of perspective of what that means. So, and I was taught this a long time ago. So when you look at a wildfire, if you looked at this sheet of grass and it was all dead, right? You don't start a fire on the outskirts and expect it to burn in. You start an outskirts by you start a fire by creating a fire in the middle with a tight circle and a tight knit group or a tight knit particular spot. You start that fire, you make that fire hot, and organically it burns outwardly. So it will burn the whole yard. All of the yard will catch on fire, and it will burn outwardly, and you'll get all the grass to partake in this burn. But if you started lighting it in different spots and tried to go from the outside in, it fizzles and dies. And the perspective of that is, when you have your tight core group of people, and this is for anybody that's trying to build a team or trying to influence behavior on a mass level, if you can nail down a small tight group of people that are committed to the mission, committed to whatever it is that you're doing, if you can get that right, that takes a long time, but if you can get that right, you can see significant outward burn quickly, and it happens fast, right? You're all seeing a fire, it takes a certain amount of time for it to start burning, and then all of a sudden it gets out of control real quick. And that's a perfect example of it took however long to get to the 75 hard, and we could even go back to talk about Sherry Sampson in this.
Yeah. And that was in the fall, right?
Right.
And I looked at that and I was like, there's no way in hell I'm doing that, because I'm not giving up booze for 75 days. I can't. I'm a social creature. I like to go out and have a glass of wine.
Shout out to you, but
Yeah, Sherry.
that took however long, and then instantaneously you put that out there, and now you've got how many people doing this, right?
It was that first little flame, that spark wasn't enough, but then it builds and it builds and it builds, and then when it, and maybe that's inspiration. Maybe that's when you're moved. When something inspires you to take action, because a lot of people consume stuff or consume content or listen to ideas that sound good, but then they may not take action, even if it makes sense. I mean,
Right.
that's what's crazy about human behavior. And when you think about the Sherry Sampson example, we went to dinner, that was the fall. I mean, she finished, so I knew about that October, November, December, essentially.
amazing.
It's funny you mention that, though, because the first thing I think about when you say people won't take action like that, it's pain. People don't want to face what they think is painful.
Right.
booze for 75 days, shin splints for 48 hours, no sleep. Whatever it is, it's like I'm not going to go run. It's too hot outside, or I'm not going. My gym doesn't have air conditioning.
I don't want to work out because I don't have enough time already.
Right. Whatever it is, it's like there's a pain point there that someone doesn't want to address. And I think what makes me crazy, I get goosebumps, is what you think is painful. I mean, I'm flooding me now. What you think is painful, it's only painful until you do it, and then you realize it's not as painful as you thought. And that doesn't make me perfect, because I'm telling you, there's a lot of shit in my life that I could stand to jump on, and for whatever reason I don't. But what a perspective to say it's not going to be as bad as you.
That comes back to the mindset, though, right? That's a developed mindset, and mindset is a muscle. It's conditioned, right? So you don't read a book and automatically get that perspective, right? Someone tell you something, you just instantaneously have that. Because you've conditioned it, because you've stepped out of your comfort zone, because you've done these multiple times in different order, in different levels of degree of difficulty, that threshold keeps getting moved. And all of a sudden you're like, I've been through this before. I know how this looks. Then you experience pain, or you experience some discomfort in your life, and you go, this isn't that big of a challenge. Well, have you gone through this before? No, but I've experienced something like it, so I know what it's like, right? So, and the mindset comes from now, I get addicted. I go, how nice is it to go, you're scared to death of something, and then you do it and accomplish it, and you're like, wow, that's no longer on my shoulders. That's no longer weighing on me. That no longer controls me. Wow, okay. So I know that whatever I'm afraid of or whatever I'm scared of, I just have to go do it. Because after it's over, it's gone. And that comes from experiencing that. And that comes from philosophy and mindset. And that's a progressive process, right? There's not a destination there. It's the be extraordinary conversation. That is a progressive realization. That is not a point in time where you've done something amazing. That is a mindset of live your life chasing things that make you fearful, chasing things that you think are impossible, chase things that you would normally not do because of what it will make you once you've done it.
Amen to that.
And you know what I chase now that you kind of shift towards that mindset is that feeling once you accomplish that in which you previously thought was impossible or improbable. And whether that's a bike ride, that 70-mile bike ride. I know for me, the half marathon, Pinky and I ran that in December, and we both got done, and our immediate reaction is like, how good do you feel right now about yourself? Like, don't you feel like you accomplished something? And it's an addicting feeling.
Totally.
And it's a choice. Like, it's a choice to be able to seek those things out for me, almost selfishly, because I want that feeling again. And when I don't do that, and I'm a lazy piece of shit, or I'm eating bad food, or whatever it is, and I do that consistently, I mean, it has a place. I mean, no one's perfect, nor do I want to be, and all that stuff. But it's just, if you do that consistently, you don't feel good about yourself. Right? And that affects not only you, it affects every other area of your life. Because when you don't feel good about you, that affects your relationships, or affects your work, that affects everything.
Well, that's a momentum thing. But for me, the biggest thing about doing stuff that you step out of your comfort zone, and number one, if I didn't have you guys and good support, I would never do it, because there's that level of inspiration and accountability, and I want to be everything that you guys perceive or want of me to be, and I know that that's a reciprocal thing. So number one, find some people that you absolutely love and want the same things, because there's infinite power in that. You can do it by yourself, but it sure as hell is a lot easier. Is a lot harder. To that point, to me, self-esteem. Self-esteem. So many people battle with self-esteem. So many people feel that they're not good enough. So many people have these conversations in their head. So many people struggle at work. They struggle at home. They get down on themselves. They second guess themselves. They pretend like they're okay when they're not, and they battle for approval in all these different aspects of their lives. And when you continually seek out barriers and to crush them, you get an immediate rush of self-esteem. That's that addictive feeling that you get. And then you do another one and you get another rush of self-esteem, and then another rush of self-esteem. And this progressive process creates this bulletproofness that we're talking about. And I was having a conversation the other day, somebody today, they said, I just feel, depressed, I'm down, things are rough for me. I said, you need to get a workout in. Yeah. And they're like, what are you talking about? It has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. I said, it absolutely does. One workout makes you feel like you have good self-esteem. One workout, just one. There's something magical about, this is the other thing, I think there's something vitally important with stressing yourself physically. There's something magic about stressing your body physically in creating self-esteem. I don't know what it is. I'm sure somebody watching this has got more neuroscience to figure it out. But for me, it's always been, it's not, let me go inside and play somebody that's really good in chess and I'm going to get the same feeling, It's not. It's put the body under stress, do something that you don't think you can do, and you get this enormous sense of, I'm tougher than I thought I was. I'm worth more than I thought I was. And if you string a bunch of those together, all of a sudden, the same person that was afraid to talk in public, the same person that was afraid to do stuff, the person that never spoke out in a group of people, the person who never thought their ideas were good, the person that always lacked self-esteem, all of a sudden they show up 10 years later and they're a completely different person. And if you trace that back, I bet you can string a bunch of events where they put themselves under stress and they made it through and they realized that they were way tougher than they thought they were.
And to me, that's personal development. We talk a lot about like reading books and stuff like that. And I honestly get a little bit annoyed with that kind of personal development because there's different tiers, if you hear me. Like there's entries, that would be learned knowledge, right? That's understanding ideas and philosophy that are in a book written by somebody else that you can digest, sort, and make your own.
Absolutely.
But then there's other sorts of personal development.
Yes.
Stressing the body, working through inconveniences, finding time in the day, managing your day, right? And then doing a really bad job, and then finding how you can change, and then repeating it. So I think that this part of personal development that we're talking about doing hard things or doing stuff that makes you uncomfortable and seeking those things out. Like Jesse Itzler, part owner of the Atlanta Hawks. I mean, he's a social media star. Go check him out. Gajillionaire. But man, his content about, he does all these crazy things. Like in February this year, he ran
the Mile Club.
Yeah, the Mile Club, right? So February 1, he runs 1 mile, 2 miles on the second, 3 miles on the third. Every single day of the month he run. Do you know how many miles that is?
130.
137 miles. It's stupid, whatever it is. But his whole thing is like the cookie jar, but it's build your life resume.
Yes.
I think that's so cool. And his like minimum, as I call it, is to do something at least once a year that is really, really challenging. And if we could all do that, what that would do.
Did you see what he did? Speaking of him, did you see when he went out to the Wim Hof in Poland and did that?
Yeah, ice baths and stuff.
Did the ice baths. I may not have it exactly right, but it's like you're going to Poland in the middle of the winter. You got to wear swim trunks, boots, and something. Yeah. I mean, these guys were outside every day and just.
Right.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
If you want to live a limitless life, you have to push beyond limits. Right? So many of us want to live this limitless lifestyle in this limitless life. And when we go to bed at night and we dream of this. But when we wake up, we don't do what's required in order to do that. And part of that is figuring out something that makes you go, well, that would really suck.
But you hit the nail.
Running at it.
You hit the nail on the head, Brad, a minute ago when you said, testing your limits, going outside, whatever your comfort zone, that person wakes up 10 years later. And to me, that's the key to what you said. It's 10 years later. This is not a, let me read, let me go through some learned knowledge, let me go run a couple marathons, and all of a sudden I'm somebody different.
Totally.
Right? I mean, Jeff Olson says, show me someone that's willing to show up with a good attitude, show it consistently with a good attitude over a long period of time. And then he references 10,000 hours, which is, I think, is 5 years or 10 years or whatever it is.
I think it's 5, yeah.
So 5 years, right? So it's like, no matter what you do, if you're in the development game, number one, it's multifaceted. You're 100% right. So remember that, right? Just because you're reading doesn't necessarily mean that you may sit in your. It's better than nothing, bro. You sit in your kitchen, read 10 pages or 15 minutes or whatever it is, and then come out and go to work with a shitty attitude, and then have a cynical day and come home and,
Read another 10 page.
but right. So it's like, allow the facets of personal development to work for you,
Sure.
realizing it's got to be over a long period of time. And that's what I loved about what you said a minute ago is then you see somebody shows up 10 years later and they're a different person.
And there's another part of that. Get around people that are like-minded, because I go back to the Randy Abrams thing. You guys hopped off that call and you said, I'm going to run 48 miles in 48 hours.
Yep.
I hopped off that call and I did 200 push-ups because he had this 50,000 push-up a year goal that he was doing.
Yes.
And I was immediately got off that call and I'm like, okay, I got to get some push-ups in.
Yes.
I think maybe it's a competitive,
great.
like, can I do this thing? And I think that's, and you talk about faceted. If it's entry level, maybe reading or listening, and then it's pushing yourself to action and doing something challenging and hard and
Right.
what you learn about it. But then that other aspect of it is get around some people that are doing the same things and value it, because you're not going to be able to go it alone.
Right, and that's the fun part about that's one of the things to me that's so special about Urban Young. I mean, there's no outliers here.
Is this a commercial?
It could be.
This is paid advertising?
There's no outliers at Urban Young. It's not like you got 17 people that listen that believe one way, and you got 2 people that are hiding out.
Yeah.
I mean, for the most part,
It's a special deal.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty cool.
And I think I would love to think we're that smart, but I think a lot of that is luck. And any organization goes through bends and flows where maybe that won't always be that way, but we're in a really special time right now where I continually, we talked about it before the camera came on, that it's just blown away. It's unbelievable. Well, and the other part of that is, Tay, to that point, I think this is a huge part of that. We talk about associations, but man, this is the biggest part of associations that is I hope a light bulb goes on for anybody that's listening or watching this. Is everybody talks about getting around good people, but that's easy, because of course you want to get around good people. Everybody wants to be around good people. But what people fail to understand is you don't get around good people without you doing the work. If you're underdeveloped and you're not at the same level, you're not going to hang out with the people that you need to hang out with in order for them to rub off on you. You haven't earned that right. They're not going to want to hang out with you unless you have some mentor that has this unique want to pull you up with them. That doesn't happen for a lot of people. That's not a normal occurrence. So the way that I would wish people would think about it is, you should have a fear and a massive urgency to do as much as you can do to develop, to when you come along to a person that you want to learn from, you've at least developed enough to where they have some sort of interest to want to hang out with you. People think, well, I don't hang out with people because they don't want to hang out with me. Well, whose problem is that? Maybe you don't provide any value to them because you haven't done what's required and necessary to add value to that person's life. That's not that person's problem that they don't want to hang out with you. That's your problem. That's called take responsibility for your own life. So people say, get around people that are good. Well, yeah, that's the easy part. Everybody wants to be around those people. Of course you should get around people, but you have to become at least worthy enough to be able to contribute at some level. And sometimes, if that's somebody you want to be around, figure out a way to give up your time. Figure out how to work for free. Do stuff that nobody else will do. Get creative on what you can offer to be around somebody that has the skills and the capacity in their life to be able to give you those lessons and that knowledge. But take responsibility for who you associate with, because there's always a path to get in front of the people that you want to get in front of. And just on the other note, there's always a path of getting away from the people that you shouldn't be around. Because doing this, what we're talking about, is extremely difficult doing it by yourself. And I'd argue you can't do it by yourself. You would have to leverage books and other people from a distance in order to influence you. If you were by yourself, that still means you didn't do it by yourself. So being around people, that's why I'm so thankful for you guys, because like this, we wouldn't run 48 miles. There's no way in hell, you know? And even with Randy, even though I love Randy and I was inspired from him, he told me that 2 months or a month before that, and I didn't take action on it. We took action because you were on the phone and collaboratively we made a terrible decision.
Oh, we made an amazing
But it's a pure perfect metaphor
Yeah.
with life
Yeah.
that when you know you have somebody that's got your back and you're around people that say, you're not crazy, man, that sounds awesome, and encourage you, it's way easier to be successful.
So well said.
Yeah, I think it's a good place to wrap up, boys. I mean, I enjoyed that conversation. I mean, it goes anywhere from what you're doing within your daily, weekly routine to be productive and effective, whether it's individually or with your teams, to mindset and shift during this time that's just deemed the new normal, to also back to the core of what's personal development.
That's true.
Well, and I think a lot of these, especially now more than ever, you know, I think we've outlined this a couple times on the podcast. You know, we're looking to encourage engagement from people that are listening and from people that are, you know, that are following along. So it's like we share these bits. Man, how cool would it be to, you know, to have people that have maybe experienced something like this, you know, something the same along the same lines, engage us. It'd be fun to just see that mastermind group, as you called it. It'd be fun to see that group grow as we adapt to a new normal and find efficiencies and, you know, influence ourselves, influence our teams, you know, be good people.
Yeah, so let us know if you're going to do some challenge or you're going to do something crazy in the
Yes.
next 30 days, or you've done something crazy the last 30 days that you thought that you wouldn't be able to do. Let us know. Man, leave some feedback in the comments. Leave us a review on the podcast.
Yeah, for
Drop
sure.
us a note when you see this video on our socials, you know, and not because we want to hear about it, but the people that are listening to this that are asking for permission to be able to release themselves to do something awesome and crazy. Every time you share that, it's just another nudge in the right direction that gives people the encouragement that they can do it too. And I do have a surprise.
Okay, before you go with your surprise,
Yep.
you just reminded me of something else. Robbie Sampson, before we were off on our run, you know the poem he read for us.
Oh man.
If you haven't listened to Marianne Williamson, what's the title of
Your deepest fear?
Your Deepest Fear, Our Deepest Fear, Marianne Williamson. Right along the lines of what Brett said about giving people permission to just you know, go do something amazing. If you haven't listened to that, look up Marianne Williamson, Our Deepest Fear, and let that be some permission for you to find some motivation. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
and
Our
thank you to
deepest
Robbie for that. Thank you to Robbie for that little poem as we were about to.
That was a
head out.
special moment.
Yeah.
A special moment. Well, I thought I would celebrate, you know, with this whole 75 hard thing. That, you know, you can't have any booze. I thought, you know, it's just fitting. We're out in the
I mean,
you know,
it's
the yard.
close to,
I don't
that's
get
5
to see you
o'clock.
guys all the time, so
Yeah,
I
it's
thought
5:05.
I thought it would be important, you know, since
Dude, I
we're
can't
talking
believe
about
this
this
is
whole
harsh,
no booze
man.
thing.
This is hard. This,
You know,
this is not a Brett thing, man.
I just felt like, and I brought you a soda water, man.
Thank you, man.
So let me get it for you. So, with that said, cheers, boys.
Cheers, fellas. Love you.
Love you too.
You guys.